There, my name is Jordan Leroy Hansen, also known as LevDev, and I'm here to actually talk about, or at least try to summarize what happened yesterday. So, yesterday, as of this recording, Wizards of the Coast had made kind of like a ridiculously big announcement about the future of MTG Arena and also pretty much their Magic the Gathering, as well as the upcoming set next month. So, I'm first going to talk about these future sets that I have up here on the little logo here. Before we then go into the Throne of Eldraine, for this video, I'm just going to specifically talk about my opinion on a few of the cards within the mechanics article and the opinion on the mechanics overall. I plan to actually do a live review, actually as of Saturday morning when I do my morning stream and such. Just pretty much go through the card list, get my overall glimpses of the cards, and just pretty much give my 2 cents. Some of them I were able to get a pretty good guess on the power level of the card, because one of the other things that Wizard of the Coast did that was kind of one of the more legitimate clever marketing moves that I think I've seen in a while was that with MTG Arena, they updated to a Brawl event, which is now our first time being able to play Brawl. But not only that, but the Brawl event actually contain the Brawl decks that they're actually going to sell once Throne of Eldraine hits. I'll talk more about it later, but let me just say that was legitimately a really clever marketing move. Helps us hype us for the new set, and it's just legitimately fun to try out the new cards. Still, that is going a little ahead of myself. Let's actually talk about the first part that I'm going to talk about, which is the sets that are coming up at the Throne of Eldraine. They kind of revealed this kind of like at the end of the stream. They actually talked about the future sets that are upcoming right after Throne of Eldraine. The first one they talked about was the winter set, which is Pharaoh's Beyond Death. For those who have not played Magic in a while, Pharaoh's is actually a returning set, and Pharaoh's is mostly its thematics is a kind of like a Greek-based set, Greek mythology and such. It's their interpretation of it. Mostly, though, a lot of people, when they saw this set symbol and saw what this set's going to be, it's legitimate excitement. Because the thing that many people who played Magic for a while, a favorite character that's within the MTG community was actually Elspeth, who came from Pharaohs and such. Or at least pretty much starred a lot in Pharaohs and had probably one of the more powerful Planeswalkers cards from that standard. Who got killed off within Pharaohs due to, well, let's just say, to not spoil it too much, let's just say a god kind of being a big jerk, for lack of a better word. Anyway, and most people wanted to see Elspeth coming back, but the problem is, they had the underworld and such, and Elspeth went down there, so the factor that we are going to Pharaohs, and one of the thematics that they said that they're going to do is explore the underworld of Pharaohs. That does mean that pretty much about almost 100% or 99.999999999% chance that we are going to see Elspeth again. And there's a lot of people that are legitimately excited for that simple aspect of it. The next set that's actually going to be the spring set, this is, forgive me for my pronunciation, I believe it's Ikoria is the name of the set, Lair of Behemoths. And from what the stream said, essentially what this set's going to be is a build-your-own monster set. Which, honestly, it's a very open explanation. But if this is somehow kind of like build-your-own kaiju or fighting the kaiju, kind of like Magic the Gathering set, I legitimately have some friends who I know who will collectively lose their marbles if that is the case. It'll be very interesting to see what they mean by build your own monster and all that. I'm almost curious if it's kind of like what they did before within Unstable, the Meld. I think it was Meld, I believe it. Not Meld. The one where you pretty much connect you connect creatures together. Like you could either cast as a creature or cast as an attachment to the creature and such. I wonder if it's a more refined variation of that mechanic. I am very curious to see how specific when they mean as build your own monster. Nevertheless, we will see. It's very interesting, and it's also new plane, which you gotta appreciate. The summer set of the next summer will be Core 2021 or 2021, And this one, pretty much the only premise we know is that it's going to be a set, kind of like how with Core 2020, it's been a set that's focused on kind of like telling about the history of genre and such for some of the cards and such, other than doing the thing that core sets do, which is have reprints and all that stuff. This one is also going to, this one specifically is going to talk about the history and have cards that's focused around Teferi. Which, honestly, a lot of people were kind of like, ugh. To be fair, to put clarification for people who don't know, Teferi has been a ridiculously popular standard card, whether it's Teferi Hero Dominaria or Teferi Time Raveler currently, that will still be in standard post-rotation. It's been a card that people have been kind of about, so people were hoping like in next rotation and we don't have to worry about more Teferis. Well, now we're going to get more Teferis. For me, I'm kind of a little bit excited about this because while I do admit the mechanics of Teferi cards can be a little bit annoyingly overpowered in some circumstances, I do like the character Teferi personally. So, in the sense that if the sets allows us to kind of like see kind of like Teferi through different periods of his character growth and such, kind of like they did with genre, that I'm actually very fascinated from the fact of the Vorfos, I believe is the way to pronounce it, part of me kind of like to see his character. I just really hope that the power level of the cards are not, well, annoyingly busted. Fingers crossed, we'll see. And the last set that's going to be the fall set within next year is Zendikar Rising. Basically, the premise they said with this one is it's Zendikar, but without the Eldrazi. Mostly, I'm just excited. I was originally excited about this because I was like, oh wait, we have a lot of elemental synergies. And Zendikar Rising had a bunch of elementals in it. That would be actually really cool. And then I remember that this fall set will be the set when that rotation happens, and we will have most of the elemental based synergies from Core 2020 rotate out, which was kind of a bummer, but still be interesting to see what kind of reprints we get. And mostly Zendikar has been known for landfall and such. It'll be interesting to see how mechanics like landfall, or maybe even we'll get level up back again or something like that. It'll be interesting to see returning a new mechanics within that set. Still, we're going back to Zendikar. We'll see what happens. And that's pretty much for the future. Now let's actually get on to what's going to be the near future or present, which is a set that I'm personally very excited for, Throne of Eldraine. Now, for those who haven't seen the trailer yet, that actually they released yesterday, I'm not going to do kind of like the live reaction trailer thing, to be quite frankly honest. I already seen it. It would be kind of dishonest for me to be like, oh, I haven't seen this trailer before. Let's see my opinion on it. Honestly, I saw the trailer, and I legitimately loved it. It was, from pretty much War of the Spark being a very dreary but emotionally compelling trailer, this one is both emotionally compelling, but ridiculously lighthearted. Yeah, there was a bit of an ending to... I'm not going to spoil it, but let's just say it's a very lighthearted set. You can definitely tell that just from this trailer alone. There's some returning characters, which for people who know, Garrick is back, which is awesome. I'll talk about the card, Garrick, in the review on Saturday, but it's just nice to see that. Plus, pretty much the basic premise, for those who don't know what Throne of Eldraine is, it basically is, as they said within their own words, it's Camelot meets fairy tales. So it's kind of like a heavy knight-based set, as you saw with some of the cards you'll see and such within the set, but it also has a fair share of fairy tale characters, like Gingerbread Man and Woman, as we see there in the trailer, as well as we've seen Beauty of the Beast, even kind of like a little nod to Pinocchio, Goldilocks. We'll probably see a lot of fairy tale-like cards in the set, and it's just kind of fun to see that. Now, the mechanics in the set are actually the thing I'm going to talk about at the moment, so let's actually get to that. The first mechanic that's actually coming into the set is Adventures. Now, basically, let's see if we can zoom in on this card. Okay. Basically, what Adventures is, it's a card that has two uses, so to speak. You could either cast it as a creature, or if you don't want to cast it as a creature, or you don't have the mana for the creature yet, you can cast the adventure aspect of it, which they confirmed that either could be a sorcery or instant speed spell. And if you resolve that spell, you do the effects of that spell, and then the creature goes into exile. But if it's exiled through casting the adventure spell, you can actually cast the creature portion of the spell later in the game. I actually legitimately like this mechanic quite a lot. It's kind of fun to just see how this card works, because we originally thought it was kind of like a split card, where you're only going to be able to use either one side of the card. It turns out that is not the case. With this card, you can just pretty much, it seems like a majority of them, the popularity is you're probably going to either cast the adventure aspect of it, and the factor that you can essentially. One thing within deck design in card games in general is, especially in Magic, you kind of have to, depending on your deck design, have to be very careful of your spell and creature count. However, with the adventure cards, that worry is lightened to a little extent. Keyword is to an extent. Because now we have these spells that essentially, if we do need to put an instant and sorcery spell, like let's say we need a land tutor, hey, Beanstalk Giant, that's both a creature spell we can play late game, but hey, it could also work as just the land tutor spell that we get from Fertile Footsteps, which is 2 and a green. Search your library for a basic land card, put it onto the battlefield, and then shuffle your library. So yeah, it's just kind of fun to just see these cards and just break them down. Mostly from at first glance, I would say it's just a really cool design that they approach, and I think the versatility of these adventure cards is nothing to underestimate, especially if we get some really absurd adventure-like spells and creatures that accommodate both of them. We shall see. Personally, though, if you want my quick opinion before I do the review on Saturday on Beanstalk Giant, it's really good. Because remember, that land doesn't enter the battlefield tapped. Also, another thing for people who had played during Guilds of Ravnica, remember that Thousand Year Storm is a card. And remember these adventure spells that are in the set and that card. So, something to keep jinky brewers in contempt, I'll say, for lack of a better word. Anyway, adventures, really cool mechanic. And then starting with a really cool mechanic to a mechanic that I'm just kind of personally, I'm kind of on it, even though I do like the incentive that the mechanic provides. It's the Adamant mechanic, which what the Adamant mechanic basically amounts to, it's a very monocolored mechanic, which basically says if you, when you cast a spell, at least spend pretty much free of the specific color mana on the spell, you get an additional effect or get a replacement effect. So, for example, with Embereth Paladin, free and a red for 1 with haste, Adamant, if you cast it with at least free red mana in the spell, it enters the battlefield with a 1/1 counter on it, so it becomes a 5/2. Honestly, I think it's one of those ones where I'm not going to say that they're not going to be competitive Adamant cards. There are probably some that might actually break the mold on that one. But this is kind of one of the more drafty-oriented mechanics I've seen. It's more just like most draft sets you have to kind of focus on, unless if the color fitting is really, really good, either a primary monocolor or even a 2-color. And I feel like that's what this mechanic is trying to force. It's trying to encourage very monocolored decks. And if the power level's there in limited for this mechanic, I think it will shine. In constructed, I mean, we do have things like the Shocklands and also the Temples and probably whatever the dual land is in this set if we do get a dual land of some sort. So we do have opportunities to make sure that we can keep for lack of a better word, to keep the requirements of the Adamant mechanic. It's just really going to be very dependent on the power level of the spell if the Adamant effect is quote-unquote worth it. Like for Embereth Paladin, it's alright. Like getting a 5/2 with haste is a lot better than a 4/1 with haste, I grant you. But the question is it worth it to go invest in a primary color to get the Adamant working? Honestly, it's going to be me needing to have to see the whole set. I do like how it encourages pretty much deck building and how people can be encouraged with it, especially if they're beginner deck brewers and such. But it's a mechanic that I just look at it and I just find it functional, if not a teeny little bit boring. But that's just my personal 2 cents. And then the other new mechanic in the set is, oh, by the way, if there is one really decent Adamant card, Slaying Fire. No, it's not Lightning Strike, but the factor that dealing 4 damage to any target in mono red burn, it has a slight little chance to see play in a burn deck. I'm just going to say that right off the bat. But the one mechanic that I think people need to keep their eyes out on because it is very, very... What's the word? It's kind of like a sleeper mechanic in the set because it doesn't feel as impressive as it starts out. The food mechanic. Throughout Throne of Eldraine, there's going to be cards that either do something and will generate food. Food is essentially an artifact token that you can sack for 2 mana to gain free life. Now, many people, when they were hoping for the mechanics in Throne of Eldraine, they were hoping for something like an artifact-producing mechanic, such as, like, for example, Clues, or even some of them were really, really hoping that Monarch would come back, or something along that line. And when they saw this mechanic, while many do love the thematical flavor, cue all the food puns at the moment, or like to chew on this mechanic, it is not really a fun... It's not even... That's actually a bad word choice there. It's more like most people were just kind of on this mechanic because it's very flavorful, but the mechanic itself is unexciting. And the main reason for many experienced players, the reason why the mechanic is just not that exciting is because one thing that gets ingrained in Magic players once you play the game for a while is that life gain cards in general have to be a lot more than life gain cards. Like, you don't want to waste a card in your deck that just says gain life. You mostly want to, in general, have something that is a card that gains life and does something. Like have a lifelink creature, because it's still a creature on the board that can help build up your board presence and such, and then when you get a few bits of life out of it, oh nice, nifty. So when they saw this mechanic being the artifact that generates, it's just an artifact that gains life, most people just are looking at it being like, eh. However, I kind of have to disagree with the meh reception that this is receiving, because I do think this is subtly one of the more powerful constructed mechanics that they could have in the set in a while. Now, don't get me wrong. Yes, you don't really want to, quote-unquote, build a deck around a food kind of sub-mechanic. But I do feel like the fact that since these foods are artifacts, most of these spells are relatively decent enough that you might want to play them. Like the one that they don't show in the article in general is actually we have a Birds of Paradise that's 1 mana that generates a food token, and the catch-22 is to generate the mana from that Birds of Paradise card, which is a golden goose, fairy tale theme and all. You have to actually sacrifice that food token. I feel like just little cards like that, if we have enough enablers and also consumers of the food token, I feel like this mechanic is a lot more constructive-oriented. And the worst case scenario, you just have to sacrifice it and gain life, which honestly is not that bad, especially if you are not wasting a card. Like, if you're wasting a card just to get this effect, then it's kind of bad. However, like I mentioned before, it's an artifact, and we're seeing in this set, as I'll talk about in the review on Saturday, there is a lot, and I'm legitimately stressing this, there's a lot of artifact-based mechanics that we're seeing in this set. So the fact that food can be used to activate those artifact-based synergies is very nice. Plus, also you sacrifice the artifact, and as we can see in Standard at the moment, especially if we can consider Rakdos Aristocrats, they might actually like the factor that they can have this token to sacrifice and, activate the Mayhem Devil, There's a lot of sacrifice-based synergies as well. So, I think food is going to be one of those mechanics that's going to be sleeper starting out. But the way I'm going to look at it is, it's more of a, if we have enough creator foods and quote-unquote consumers of food type cards in the set, it's kind of like almost a balanced version of energy from Kaladesh, which is a really weird thing to say. And also kind of ironic, since you consider that the primary use of food is actually to gain energy, so, Still, I am going to laugh at the store every time I eat a snack and be like, oh, I'm going to gain 3 life. So it's going to be fun with that. And the last thing I will talk about before that, and still just to stress this to people, I'll just go to the news for this one. If you haven't yet and you still play Arena, please, 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 please wait, or not wait, please, 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 please try to jump onto Arena and try to play the new Brawl event. You really get to try out some of the new cards in the new set, and let's see, there we go, that's the article. And some of the commanders are really sweet. Like, there's Chulane, there's literally a dragon that's really good Jun, kind of like Aristocrats. Chulane is just really good value deck, and it's absurdly broken in my personal opinion. The fairy deck is also really fun, so if you like fairies, that's good. And Knight's Charge is just a really fun Timmy deck, in my personal opinion. I would say you can have access to try these for free on the Arena client, at least until September 9th, and you get some new cards from the new set to add to your collection, so I would recommend doing that now if you can't. Nevertheless, I'll end the article for now. I do want to ask, though, for people who have watched to the end, do you want me to have kind of like card review videos of this upcoming set? I know some people who like the card review videos, and I know some people who don't, but for people who do watch this content and watch my channel, if you want me to try to do the card reviews, I'll do it. Like, I'm definitely doing the Twitch live version, but if you want me to, like, make an official kind of like either summary of powerful cards that I think would be potential, that's what I usually do. Sometimes I do card reviews, or sometimes I wait till a whole set's revealed and just talk about cards that I think would be powerful cards to consider to play. Whatever approach you feel like is the best, I'll try to implement it. Nevertheless, I will have my excitement of the fairy tale and night shenanigans ready for the fall. Nevertheless, I hope you all have a lovely day, and this is LevDev, signing out.